The last thing I remembered was Kreth. His voice, smooth and patient, the way the shadows moved at his command. And then, nothing. Now I was here. Alive. Selene wasn't. A slow rage curled in my gut, spreading like fire through my limbs. She had been beside me one moment, gone the next. Taken. I had to find her. I pulled myself up, every muscle aching, but I was breathing. And that meant someone had spared me. Or worse. I wasn't a fool. A survivor doesn't question luck. He questions the hands that deal it. Something rustled behind me. A presence. I didn't hesitate. I spun, fists ready, only to stop. A hooded figure stood beneath the eaves of a crumbling building. Face shadowed. Posture relaxed. But I knew better. Anyone standing still in Venaré and watching from the dark wasn't a bystander.
You're awake.
I flexed my fingers. For now. The figure took a step forward, lantern light catching the edge of a smirk beneath his hood.
You should be dead, assassin.
Been told that before. He tilted his head, studying me.
And yet Kreth left you alive.
I didn't flinch. Who are you?
A friend.
I almost laughed. Nobody in this city has friends. Instead, I asked the only question that mattered. Where is Selene? The stranger's smirk faded. And that told me everything. She was still alive. But not for long. The stranger led me through the back alleys, his steps soundless on the wet cobblestones. He didn't speak, and I didn't press. He had answers, and I had patience. The fog thickened, swallowing the city whole. We moved through old districts, past shuttered brothels and abandoned guild halls. The scent of damp stone and rot clung to the air. He stopped before a rusted iron gate, barely visible between the ivy-choked walls.
She's not here, but you'll want to see this first.
I stepped through, wary. The courtyard beyond was empty save for a single wooden post driven into the ground. A corpse hung from it. I didn't need to see the face to know. The body was dressed in the dark robes of the veiled hand. Blood slicked the wood, still fresh. Someone had made an example of him. I turned to the stranger. Who did this? He pulled back his hood. A young face, sharp, angular. Elven like me. But his eyes were colder, harder. The kind of stare that only men who have seen too much death carry.
My name is Melric, and if you want to find Selene, you'll listen carefully.
Melric led me inside a ruined chapel. Its stained glass shattered, its pews rotting. Candles burned low along the altar, their flames flickering in the draught. He knelt beside a crate, prying it open with a dagger. Inside, stacks of ledgers, parchment, and coded messages. I frowned. You rob libraries in your free time? Melric ignored the jab.
This was taken from a veiled hand courier 2 nights ago. He was supposed to deliver it to one of Kreth's lieutenants.
I reached for the parchment, scanning the symbols. Encrypted. But one phrase stood out, written in clear, bold ink. The dagger falls at dusk. I exhaled. A kill order. Melric nodded.
Selene was marked the moment you both entered Varen's manor.
I didn't ask how he knew. It didn't matter. Selene was out there, hunted. If she was still alive, she wouldn't be for long. Melric leaned forward.
The veiled hand has fractured. Some still serve Kreth. Others have been silenced.
I met his gaze. And you?
Let's just say I'm in the business of toppling kings.
I nodded. For now, that was enough. Melric and I moved quickly. There was no time to waste. We crossed the rooftops, our shadows fleeting against the moonlight. The city below was restless. Guards patrolled in double numbers, and whispers of Kreth's return slithered through the streets. I pushed aside the distractions. Selene came first. Melrick stopped near the edge of a noble district, pointing toward a grand estate bathed in torchlight.
She's there.
I studied the guards at the entrance, veiled hand mercenaries, heavily armed. Kreth? I asked. Melrick shook his head.
One of his lieutenants, someone who doesn't trust him. He's using her as leverage.
I adjusted my gloves, rolling my shoulders. Let's end this. Melrick grinned.
I thought you'd never ask.
I drew my daggers. For Selene. For the answers Kreth owed me. Tonight, blood would run. The estate loomed before us, a monstrous thing of towering stone and gold-trimmed windows, its wealth on full display. Guards stood at every entrance, their faces sharp, their hands close to their weapons. These weren't standard mercenaries. These were killers, trained, disciplined, veiled hand. Selene was inside, and she was running out of time. Melrick crouched beside me on the rooftop overlooking the courtyard.
They're expecting an attack. If we go in loud, we die before reaching the front door.
Then we don't go through the front door. His grin was quick and sharp.
I hoped you'd say that.
The shadows swallowed us as we moved. Silent steps, calculated kills. Knives met throats before any alarms could be raised, bodies lowered to the ground without a sound. We reached a second-floor balcony, slipping inside through an unlocked window. The air smelled of wine, candle wax, and something else. Something metallic. Blood. Melrick stiffened.
They've already started.
I didn't waste another breath. Selene was in there, and I wasn't leaving without her. The hallways were quiet. Too quiet. Every step felt like a mistake waiting to be made. The estate was too well fortified, the guards too prepared. Someone knew we were coming. A trap. But we had no choice. Melrick led the way, guiding us toward a grand set of double doors. Candlelight flickered through the cracks, illuminating something dark pooling beneath. I pushed the door open. Inside, a man lay slumped against a table, his throat slit, blood soaking through his fine silks. His eyes were wide, mouth slightly parted, like he had been about to speak his last words but never got the chance. And across the room, bound to a chair, was Selene. Her face was bruised, her breathing shallow, but her eyes burned with fury. They hadn't broken her yet. I crossed the room, kneeling beside her, already cutting through the ropes. We're getting you out.
Raezur, it's a...
The sound of steel sliding from scabbards. We weren't alone. Melrick was already moving. His blade flashed, catching one attacker in the throat before the others could react. I spun, dagger in hand, parrying the first strike aimed at my ribs. Selene ripped the remaining rope from her wrists, kicking her chair into the nearest attacker, buying us precious seconds, but there were too many. The veiled hand hadn't just been waiting for us. They had been preparing. A sharp whistle cut through the chaos, and then the guards stopped. A figure stepped through the doorway, slow and deliberate. I tensed. Dermont. He wore the same composed look as always. But something was different. His eyes were colder, his stance more assured. Melrick cursed under his breath. Selene went still beside me.
I had a feeling you'd make it this far. Shame, really. You were always the sharpest knife in the dark, Raezur. but even the sharpest blades can be broken.
I took a step forward, weapons ready. You sold us out.
Well, you never did ask who I was working for.
I felt the weight of the moment sink in. The veiled hand, the council's secrets, Varen's death. Everything. It led back to Dermont, and I had never seen it coming. The realization hit like a blade between the ribs. Dermont had been feeding us information, sending us on missions, guiding us straight into the fire. I clenched my fists. How long?
Since the beginning. The city's fate was sealed long before you ever started asking questions. I simply put the right pieces in play.
His voice was calm, like he was explaining an unfortunate business decision. Selene's breath was unsteady beside me, her fingers twitching toward the knife at her belt. Dermont saw it, smirked, like he had already won. I took a step closer. You killed Varen. He didn't deny it. You set us up at the manor. A small nod. And Kreth? I asked. Where does he fit into your game? Dermont's expression darkened.
Kreth is a relic, a shadow desperately clinging to power. He thinks he controls the veiled hand, but he's a fool. He won't see the knife coming either.
I didn't hesitate. I lunged. Dermont moved faster. A single snap of his fingers and every blade in the room turned against us. Selene's dagger flashed, striking the first guard before they could react. Melrick was already in motion, his sword carving through the nearest mercenary. And I went for Dermont. He sidestepped, smoothly, precisely, like he had been waiting for it. His own blade flashed, aimed for my throat. I barely twisted in time, the edge slicing past my jaw. But now, for the first time, I saw the truth. I had never known the real Dermont. His fist drove into my ribs, knocking me back. Guards swarmed, cutting off our escape. Selene fought beside me, Melrick holding the line, but the numbers weren't in our favor. Dermont watched, calm, unaffected, like this was all a game.
You should have stayed in the shadows, Raezur. Now you won't leave this room alive.
His voice was almost regretful. I wiped the blood from my lip, chest rising and falling. If I die here, I'm taking you with me. He laughed softly.
No, you won't.
And then the doors burst open. Bolts, arrows, swords, explosions, chaos. Another faction had just arrived, and suddenly everyone was fighting everyone. The room was a storm of blood and steel. I lost track of Melrick and Selene. It was just me and Dermont now. We fought blade to blade, matching each other strike for strike. I was good. He was better. He disarmed me, drove me back, pinned me against the wall, his dagger pressed against my throat.
This city belongs to me now. You and your pathetic companions can't stop me.
I gritted my teeth. Then you should have killed me when you had the chance. And with one last desperate move, I drove my hidden blade into his side. Dermont gasped, staggering back, gripping his wound. But he wasn't dead. Not yet. Guards swarmed between us. The chaos dragged me away. And as I slipped through the fight, bleeding, barely alive, Dermont's voice echoed after me.
You can't run forever, assassin.
But he was wrong. I wasn't running. I was waiting. Waiting for the poison to take effect after I stabbed him on the side. Good riddance, Dermont.